everybody, welcome back to Rules of the Road podcast. My name is David Schuler. Today is episode 12, and today we're joined by artist Andrew Martinez. Now, Andrew is somebody that I've known for about 21 years or so. We both were in the Marine Corps. We were stationed together. We worked together. And the one thing that I always remember about Andy, there's a lot of things I remember about him. But the one thing that he was always doing, he was always involved in art somehow, whether it be drawing or sculpting or whatever. That's what he did. He grew up doing it. He did it then, and now he is starting to see some commercial, success as far as being recognized. And as he mentions, just right before this podcast is being released, some of his artwork is going on display in an exhibition at an art gallery in New York City. And so, we're going to ahead and talk about that and talk about how, his evolution as an artist, and how he approaches things, his mindset, and how he just generally overall approaches life and how he thinks about things. And, some people, they think, oh, it's an artist, whatever, and how they're these weird, abstract people that, don't make a lot of sense. And I can tell you right now, Andy is everything but that. He's about as a real regular dude that you're ever going to know. I kind of close out this episode by saying he's got the goofiness of Robin Williams, but he's also as cool as the other side of the pillow. And that's the best way to describe him, is that he's no stranger for hemming it up for the camera, but at the end of the day, from what I remembered, and then just speaking with him again today, not much has changed. And to have someone that is like that in your life, it's a good thing, because there's not a lot of people like that. And so I definitely thank you for everyone who's chiming in. Take the time, listen to what he says. His whole episode is a whole rules of the road lesson. So try to take time and listen to everything that he says. And the one thing is it struck me while we were sitting here talking, and I kind of mentioned this at the end of the episode, is that we met 21 years ago in the Marine Corps. We got to know each other, growing up, in that close, almost brotherhood, where being in the Marines, it's almost like it's a family within a family, or things. Think of it like that. And it kind of hit me like 21 years. We kind of lost touch for a little while. He got stationed in Korea and Japan, and I had gotten out and moved to Arizona, and then he got back out and moved to New Mexico, and kind of crossed paths on social media, and then we've been kind of trying to keep in touch a little bit here and there. But it kind of struck me halfway through that it and like I said, I kind of mentioned this at the end of the episode, is like, why did it take so long, or something like this, just to have like as quick as, say, a Zoom meeting or a FaceTime, or something like that. And it's just like, we were really good friends in the Marines, and then we kind of touched base with them. Luckily we were able to kind of reconnect. But it's like, why did it take so long to just have a face to face? Yeah, okay, we do a like on a social media, or it's maybe some sort of witty comment, but it's like, hey, why not just have a phone call? And that's kind of funny, is a lot of people don't do that. You could have, in most situations, if you live somewhere, you have a lot of family within a general, say, 25, 30 mile radius here and there. And how often do you see each other? Is it only on the holidays? Is it maybe not even the holidays? Do you do just say the witty comment on some sort of social media? And it's just like, oh yeah, you can find time to leave a quick like, but do you do the phone call? Like, hey, if you got cousins or other family members that live right down the street or within like say 15, 20 miles, try to get together, try to connect. A lot of people take a lot of time for granted. That's one thing that Andy kind of closes out with is that, we're not promised tomorrow, and we're really not. I've mentioned this before in other podcasts is, my family lives 2,000 miles away, and I try to, keep in touch with them, but it's funny how, social media, it gives us the opportunity to connect with people, but we also take a lot of that for granted. Um, it really makes you think, and it kind of hit me hard about halfway. I kind of mentioned in the beginning, off camera, and we kind of touched on it at the end, but it hit me. I'm like, dude, why did it take so long for or to do something like this? And I know I have to make a better effort with trying to keep in touch with people because I'm very selective on who's in my circle, and I know I need to make a better effort to connect with people who might not connect with me. And that's my takeaway from this is like, just reach out in the fall and just talk to people. Just try to stay connected, and the best that you can, because you don't know what's going to happen. And it's just like I said, don't take it for granted. If you've got family that lives within a certain mile radius, visit them. I know we got this whole corona thing going on, but reach out to them, talk to them, do something. um and if they live far away, contact them as well. um yeah. So I don't know if you can see my face, but it kind of hit me like, wow, it's taken this long to do something like this, and kind of kicking myself. But I'm glad that I got to do this, and it was kind of my wake up call, going, hey, you know what? There's a handful of people that I still keep in touch with from the Marines, and but none of us have really had video calls, or just like say, hey, if you're in town, come visit, or you're just passing through, say hi. We have the technology. Don't let relationships that you may have with people slip away just for the sake of slipping away. And with that being said, Andy Martinez, episode 12. Contact information is going to be down below. Social media contact is going to be in the description as well. Um, listen to everything that he says. At the end, I have, some of the artwork that's I pulled from his social media to go ahead and show. If you like it, give him props. If you want to order some of the stuff that he has, go for it. Just keep an eye out, because he's been doing this for a long time, and he's not going to be stopping anytime soon. So thank you. I hope you enjoy. He was a good friend of mine, and you can kind of see why. So enjoy. Episode 12. And today we're bringing on a good friend of mine that I've known for over 20 years. His name is Andrew Martinez. We served in the Marine Corps together, but this dude is, well, you know what? I'm not. You just listen to him talk, and you'll see what I'm saying. So, Andy, I've asked you here today to kind of talk about some of your passions. Mainly for being an artist. There's so much you can do, but you're seeing a lot of recent success in your artwork. And that's kind of what I wanted to hear. So, let's go ahead and jump right into it. When you started, creating art, like most people, you did it because you enjoyed it. Did you ever think that it would result in that you'd be in an exhibition in an art gallery in New York? I mean, can you tell us, about, what was the gallery that contacted you? How did it feel to see that your artwork is hitting this level?
It was so there are like 5 questions in there.
Yeah.
Let me
Yeah.
unpack them. So I've been doing artwork since 5th grade. When I was in high school, I won awards. I was in the local paper right before I joined. Um, right, self-taught artist joins Marines, um, and then I joined the Marines because you always hear about the starving artist, right? So I didn't want to be a starving artist, so I picked computers, and I did computers. No, I'm still doing computers. I got a PhD in it, um, and then so I picked art back up. I want to say around December, um, mostly because it was a good stress relief. My father passed away in September of 18, and then um, coupled with my daughter's in dance. So when I take her to dance practice, I would sit in the car and just draw for the 3 hours while we were in dance practice. And um, so it was more of getting back into it, de-stressing, and um, just pushing myself to where I was 20 years ago. Um, so the other question you asked, did I anticipate myself ever being in a gallery? Um, what's funny is even when I was getting out of the Marine Corps, um, that was my my first ambition was to be, that starving artist, move in with my girlfriend at the time. She's now my wife. Um, and then, um, grow my artwork. But then I didn't want to be a starving artist, right? With a family. Um, so I went back into computers and finished my schooling. So I was in schooling for 12 years, right?
Yeah.
Um, so did I ever see myself in the gallery? I did, just not as soon as I was anticipating. Um, the gallery contacted me maybe 5, 6 weeks ago and said, "We see your work, and we think your work is something that we can put into our show," which actually was interesting timing for this podcast. It's almost like it's an infomercial, but uh, Monday
What I do?
is August 10th is when the exhibition starts, and the I'll be putting the URL, the link to that in my on my Instagram page, my Facebook page, so you can see a virtual gallery and kind of walk around like you're there in person. Little plug.
Yeah, I did my research. So, and this episode should be airing on August 12th. So, yeah, it'll be perfect timing. So, you mentioned how you started out, when you were, younger, and you gained some, local recognition back in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, before you joined the Marines. But what initially drew you to being an artist when you were so young?
So naturally, I'm an introvert, but you always want to have friends, right? Um, so what I found was, and I always carried my art book with me. Any of my friends, if you talk to them to this day, they go, "You always got an art book," right? I was always drawing in class. I was drawing them. I was drawing. Hey, can you draw this football player for me, right? John Elway, right? Remember him, right?
Yeah,
I'm just
a little
kidding.
bit.
Dan Marino, right? The football players of the '90s, and then the comic books were big in the early '90s. So, uh, can you draw Spawn? Can you draw? Sure, sure. Um, so then, next thing during lunch or recess, I'd have 5 or 6 people behind me just watching me draw, right? And so it became this way to connect with friends. Uh, so, you know, like in high school, I wasn't the jock. I wasn't in drama. I was the art kid, right? Um, so yeah, you know, does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, very does. It's kind of funny how you say you're an introvert because that's like saying that I'm outgoing. Um, like, wait a second. Um, but yeah, it's kind of funny you mentioned, you know, Todd McFarlane because in Spool Spawn, um, my previous company that I used to work for, they shared an office where McFarlane, the McFarlane Toys Company was.
Okay.
And my first day there, I walk up the stairs and I just see this huge window front of all the McFarlane toys, all these different types of Spawn collectibles. You look inside the windows, you're seeing all these awards, Grammys, I mean, and just everything. And you're like, whoa. And then one day, it was like there maybe a week. I come out, coming out of the restroom and I passed somebody. I'm like, wait a second, is that? Sure as shit, it was Todd McFarlane. And so
That's
I'm outside
awesome.
looking this. I'm outside looking at some of his collectibles that are in the cases, and there's one where Spawn's sitting in a throne holding a skull, and I'm looking at it, and Todd comes back out, and I kind of look at him, and he's looking at me, and I'm like, "Excuse me, are you Todd McFarlane?" He goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Oh, holy shit!" You know. So
That's pretty awesome, man.
here I am, 38 years old, totally geeking out like a 7-year-old girl meeting Beyonce. You know what I mean? And I'll tell you what, he was just a total down to earth dude. Gave me a tour of the entire his office, and just to know that I'm sitting every time I would see him, I'd hear, "Hey, David," and I'm like, "Holy shit, Todd McFarlane knows my name." Obviously, I don't work in that office anymore, and that was, you know, that's the one downside of leaving. But you know, people never really forget, you know, their idols. Um, and it's kind of funny where you talk about being an introvert. You know, in all the years that I've known you, I can't really remember you ever being in a bad mood. I mean, you've always seemed so positive. You never really let negativity show through. You know, if anyone looks at your social media, there's hardly any, you know, negativity there as well. So, you know, what are your rules of the road per se on constantly keeping a positive perspective?
Well, it's interesting because like the picture that I just posted this morning kind of summarizes. There's a quote, right? So the piece that I'm working on right now, just to give background, is I'm calling it the community piece. And when I created the idea for this, I reached out to the Instagram community. I prefer to call them like the community versus my followers, right? Because then it's, I don't know, that's just me, right?
Yeah.
So I reached out to the community and said, hey, we're kind of going through a lot of crazy times these past couple of months. So why don't you post a picture of, and this is what you did, right? You posted one of your pictures, and this is that's one of my next portrait is George Washington Carver.
Yeah.
But everybody should post a picture of their a favorite quote of theirs that gets them through rough times, and um, and a picture of the author of the quote, right? So to circle back to the question, the picture that I posted today was Tupac, and
Yeah.
Tupac's quote that somebody else mentioned, and it's kind of my ethos, right? Is um, you could spend minutes, hours, days, months, or even years uh, worrying about the different things that could have or would have or should have happened, or you can leave the pieces on the floor and move the on. So, yeah, uh, you know, that's not to say that there's some things you can control, there's some things you can't control, right? It's um, you know, So how do I do it? That comes from the way I was brought up. My mom, dad, grandpa, grandma, you know, always find that silver lining. There's always something positive. It, you know, um, there's always something positive out of every negative.
Yeah.
That's just my philosophy. Like a real world scenario. So like I said, my father just passed away, right, 2 years ago. And because I was home and visiting my dad during that time frame, we got to meet some of my cousins' family, right? Long story short, my cousin's girlfriend introduced her dad to my wife's mother, and now they're engaged.
Wow.
Right? So that whole situation would not have occurred, right, of newfound love had we not been home to take care of my dad while he had cancer.
Yeah.
So there's always a silver lining at some point.
Yeah. So there's this piece of artwork, I'm sure you've maybe seen it. It's called the Impossible Painting. It's where it's got one hand drawing another hand, which in turn is back to drawing the original hand. So kind of think of like a yin yang symbol, but with hands drawing each other. What is something that you would consider to be an impossible painting for you?
Right now, the impossible thing for me is, and I wouldn't really call it impossible, but I would say scenery. I haven't really mastered scenery, but I would, and the reason why I say, it's not impossible. Everything, especially when it comes to art, is possible, right? My kids are in Taekwondo, so I say, it's just I'm a white belt when it comes to doing scenery. I just haven't practiced enough, right? So anything is possible. Now, maybe one of the things that my mind does not focus, like where I struggle to it just with scenery, is the abstract art. That's one thing that when I see that, I'm like, how do they do that? Like a Picasso, right? Like a Picasso painting. It's amazing how he does it. If you've ever watched any of his videos, but to me, I was brought up, quote unquote, brought up in the art world for realism, and kind of the next phase of my evolution is to move into hyper realism, where it's like better than photo quality, right? But that takes a long time. So yeah.
Ross, I know you're talking about a lot of quotes is with your next piece. So Ross Baldwin, this is something that's always kind of stuck with me, and this is a perfect example to use it. Ross Baldwin coined the phrase, "Without a muse, an artist is simply a madman shouting at the stars." So a muse is typically a woman in nature, but what inspires you and how?
So whenever I pick a piece, I try to do incrementally challenging pieces. If I don't have a theme for a painting, right, like the ones I've been doing as of late, even the ones that are going to New York to be in the gallery, they all have a theme within the portraits. And it's one of those, like an Easter egg. You only know the theme of this painting if you followed me on Instagram.
Yeah.
Right. So the if you look at, like, from my first couple of pictures, even when I was doing my black and white pencil, each one was significantly different than the last. So I pushed and challenged myself to explore shading differently. And then I moved into oil paints, got back into oil paints, and then it became, okay, let me just master the face. And then now let me throw in blues and purples and greens. Okay, now let me. So that's that. I would say that's what inspires me is the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think one of the next pieces I want to do is a more realistic engine. I did a 454 small block in a Nova a
Yeah.
couple weeks back, but that was one of the paintings that I actually got pissed off at because it wasn't to what I was wanting. So I
Yeah.
just called it done and set it aside.
Yeah.
It was just
Yeah. So that's a good segue into my next question is talk about getting pissed off. You know, every artist is fueled by some sort of emotion, whether it be pain or happiness or sorrow or pessimism or love. Do you approach each piece of art with that same emotion and mindset, or does it really depend on what you're trying to create?
I think it kind of depends on the piece that I'm working on. Um, so this morning I was working on the Tupac painting, and I was watching Walking Dead. Yeah, you know,
It's a
but
bit of a contrast.
it is. But the last set of portraits that I was working on, because they were all music based. When I was painting George Clinton, I was listening to P Funkadelic and the P Funk All Stars, right? Parliament. When I
Yeah.
was painting Tupac, I was listening to Tupac. When I was painting Aesop Rock, I was painting, I was listening to Aesop. So it was kind of like channeling their music into the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's answering the question or if that makes sense, but that's kind of what I've been doing.
No, it makes complete sense because that way it's almost like channeling that person's spirit, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because one of the portraits, like the one I was working on this morning, it takes about 4 to 5 hours to get done on these small little portraits, which is about how many songs? 40 or 50 songs,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? So you're just jamming, right? Kind of represent the mood.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny you mentioned musicians and how you're doing how you just did a portrait of all these musicians that have helped inspire you. What would be some of these songs that would be on the top of Andy's playlist that are always there no matter what?
Well, I have my go-to favorites, right? Which there's always Digital Underground, right?
Mm-hmm.
I so there's the Humpty Dance, and then one of the songs that Tupac did that I jammed to every once in a while was on his sophomore album, Strictly for My, with the song Strictly for My. That one just um, there's a verse in there, the second verse that just hits home.
Yeah.
Then Aesop Rock, DJ Crush, DJ Shadow. Those are my go-tos as of late.
Yeah. What, no Portishead? Because I remember you used to rape my ears with that.
No, I still listen to Portishead. She was the one. She was Beth Gibbons was one of the portraits that I did on the musician painting.
Yeah.
But they haven't released anything new since 2008.
Yeah,
I
it's
think they
safe to
broke
say they
up.
might be done.
Yeah. So
Okay,
yeah.
very cool. So one thing that that I haven't seen change so much in the past 20 years, whether it's not seeing you remember back in the day seeing you in person to now, just looking at your social media, you're never been a stranger for hamming it up for the camera. Okay, you're always going to have some sort of strike a pose. Do you ever think that you'll delve into photography to help maybe complement your painting or sculpting, or is that an avenue that you might not pursue?
Um, I would say I dabble in it, but you figure photography is just the modern day, modern being the last, whenever photography was created, but the modern day painting.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the key concepts that you need to focus on with photography is making sure you frame the image, contrast, lighting. How does the lighting set the mood? Where, with a camera, they'll use different filters to adjust the mood, right? So if it's too red, they'll put on a blue one, whatever, right? And I just do that with paint.
Yeah.
So where I do use the photography is to take good pictures of my artwork.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, I don't plan on going out and being an Uber photographer. From an equipment perspective, it's very expensive. My wife went through, she got her associate's degree in photography, or just completed not too long ago. And all the lights and setups and filters and cameras and memory cards and backup discs.
Yeah.
It's a couple bucks.
Yeah. The one thing that I've heard as far as like an argument to that would be some people who say paint and draw, there's, I guess, a bit of a disdain towards photography just because it can be so easily manipulated that you're not getting the true raw image. And that's what I find. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I would have to disagree. I think photography in itself is an art. It's not just click,
Yeah.
right? You have to know the aperture speed. You've got to know the lighting. You've got to know. There's like 20 different measurements you should take a good picture, besides just clicking, right?
Yeah.
And the true masters, they'll set up their camera and spend 20 minutes clicking, measuring before they take the one picture, right? Which is not unlike an artist. Like when I set up my palette, I'll do the raw paints, but then I'll spend 20-30 minutes mixing the colors to get my own unique color to match the picture.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not going to discount and say that photography is not a form of art. It is a distinct form of art. It's just not mine.
Yeah. And I think what I was kind of going for, and growing up, and my mom's dad being into photography, and my mom being a very hobbyist as far as photography, which has come on to me, having my own photography, and then also now part of my degree was digital, a lot of the digital media, which is kind of what I do on the side as well. But what you find now is like people who take a cell phone, click, throw an Instagram filter on it, and call it done, because there is that ease that I know some people are like, all right, hey, you have a fancy phone that shoots, high res, click, throw a filter on it, you're done. And I know that's where a lot of people are like, hey, that's kind of lazy. But I mean, if the technology is there, who really has the time to sit there and try to learn aperture speed or your ISOs and how your contrast and stuff like that? So kind of speaking about, all these different types of mediums lately, a lot of your work has been in oil paint and canvas. And, as you mentioned previously, you did a lot of black and white pencil. You've also done some sculptures, which we haven't talked about. But what is your favorite overall medium to create in? And on top of that, what is something that you haven't done that you would like to try?
So my favorite is oil from a paint perspective, mostly because I have a very busy life, and oil paints take 5 days to dry, if not longer. So I can start a piece and I don't have to remix my colors because the paint dried.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise, like if I was able to, because it's an investment investing in paints, right? So it's just easier to paint, set. Like last night, I started Tupac. I came to work Tupac this morning after 8 hours, and the paint's still wet. Acrylic dries in like 30 minutes. Watercolor, depending on your amount of water and paper that you're using, it can take an hour or two, right? Um, where if I'm taking my daughter to dance practice for 3 hours, I can start before I go to dance practice. I can come back afterwards and I can still work. You know what I mean? So that's my preferred. Um, when it comes to sculpture, I always preferred the white clay, right? The one that when you put it in the kiln, it turns white. Otherwise, it's gray. Um, I did do wax sculptures, which is kind of the precursor to doing metal work. And that was, so one of the pieces that won the like 1997 state fair was, I had a woman coming out of the floor like she was flying like a superhero would, and it was made out of wax. The next piece after doing the wax is you would make the mold and then do the metal work. Well, they're not going to have metal work in a high school, right?
No.
So that's the one form of artwork that I haven't done is metal artwork or carpentry, right, or woodwork. Those are the two forms that I haven't invested in. But I think that would be neat to, because 3D, the sculpture, you create the art. It's obviously in multiple views, so you can take a picture of it, look at it from different angles. So it's more robust. But then the reason why I haven't invested in that is space and time. So to answer the questions.
Yeah, and that's kind of where, like with my job, I deal a lot with mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, and being a BIM manager, which is building information management, I control all those 3D models. And when I started out, I enjoyed it because it's like, hey, I'm building pieces, and it's just a giant building that, like I said, it's just a giant puzzle, and you're thinking 3D conceptually. And so no matter what, you can find art in something. But let's go ahead and switch gears really quick. You mentioned your career as far as being, in computers. So, outside of your artwork and your professional career, you've dealt with computers for, about 20 years, where you've started it in the Marine Corps, and now you've working your way up to the corporate ladder. Do you find that there is any correlation what you do while working in computers to being an artist?
There is a direct correlation. There are many times where, so as an artist, you've got to be able to create a rough draft, a concept of an idea, and then over time, flesh it out, right? So right now, I would say for the past 10 years, I've been more on the strategy side of the company and moving things from strategy into operations. So you've got to take a draft of a concept, and how do you do that with computers? Well, you draw circles and squares and lines. So you say, here's a draft process, here's a new system that we're going to bring in, and then you start through dialogue fleshing it out with all of the counterparts in the organization, and then you get more context, you add more color, and somebody says, well, here are these risks. Well, there's always going to be a risk, just like within a good painting, there's always going to be a shadow, right? So how do you counter that shadow and make so that there's bright? You know what I mean? So there's a direct correlation. I remember one of the key phrases that I had a friend contact me when I was doing some artwork, and she was like, one thing I remember you always teaching was, don't be afraid of the shadows. A lot of the younger artists, what that means is a lot of the younger artists will only take the shadow so far and not go black.
Yeah.
You know, if you ever get the time, go check out artists, and you'll see that there's some that go dark and do that high contrast, and there's some that stop at like 50%, and that's done. So don't be afraid to go dark. It helps brighten the shadow, but you also need to counter that with some highlights, right?
Yes.
So how that relates to the IT world. My PhD is in information security and assurance. So my whole world focuses on, are we in compliance? What's the probability of a breach? What are the things that we can put into place to mitigate those risks, right? So there are some leaders who go, don't tell me the bad news, Sean the bad news, I don't want to hear it. Whereas my approach is to embrace it and then say, okay, what are we going to do about the risk so that no harm happens, right? So that's where I see there's a correlation from artwork to computers.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny how, you can always try to find some form of artwork in that. Like I had kind of mentioned, about what I do. I have to take diagrams from engineers and take this 2D schematic and somehow bring it to a 3D life. And I find that it's hard for engineers who just crunch numbers, can't think. They're just used to thinking binary, ones and zeros, and try to switch to that 3D conceptual non-linear thinking. And it definitely takes, a toll, or it's something that some people can't understand, and, you don't have a knack for. And, some things you're good at, some things you're not. And speaking about, having other skills, on top of all your other artistic skills, you know how to play the guitar, as was taught by your father. How would you describe some of the similarities and differences between perspective of auditory art and visual art?
At its core, it's a form of creativity, right? Because it's creative. I can't know a way to express it. But one of the things, I don't know if you've ever done the research on it or looked into it, maybe just come across articles, but there's many people that are in the arts who do multiple arts. They're just typically known for one art. Right?
Yeah.
So like John Lennon, right, was a great musician, but he also did paintings, right?
Yeah.
And you see that across the board. I even noticed that, I want to say it's Pierce Brosnan, maybe. He's also does artwork on the side, or maybe it's Alec Baldwin. I don't know. One of my followers got like 20 pages of likes from his artwork by one of the actors, and I can't recall which one. So I went and checked, and yeah, he's also doing artwork. So it's just something that I've noticed is that if you do one art, you tend to do majority of them. It's just which one do you get noticed for?
Yeah.
I guess.
So jump back to your career a little quick. Several years ago, you moved from Albuquerque to Fargo, of all other places. You're used to being a couple hours away from Mexico. Now you're a couple hours away from Canada. What was it like to move away? I mean, to make that decision to leave, almost everything and anyone you've known, and move into a place where you don't have any idea about anything. What was it like?
It's kind of like joining the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Just, this is the cold duty station. So, we got it's interesting timing. It was around this week, 8 years ago, that I completed the interview. And then it was a 2 weeks notice. And then we moved out here on the third week. September 10th, it will be 8 years that we've been out here. So it's a total of 2 enlistments. Right?
Yeah.
But that was kind of the mentality and approach that we had as the whole family unit, is kind of treat this as a military deployment, right? My family, I was in the Marines for 8 years, and then I was overseas for 5.5 in Okinawa and Korea, so, or 4.5, sorry. So my family's been used to me not being there, right?
Yeah.
And then I got used to being on my own, right? Having to make those command decisions. So
Yeah.
it wasn't too hard of a jump. I would say my wife had the bigger jump because this is her first time being away, other than for college, but that was only 2 hours away. So
Yeah. So talking about, a lot of other, and that, well, to kind of touch on that, I, grew up in the Midwest, and then, obviously we were stationed together in California, and now I'm living in Phoenix, still 2,000 miles away. And it's kind of funny how you mentioned, your family kind of gets used to you not being there, but, kind of looking a lot with the opportunities we have, whether it be social media or some other way, we always still try to find a way to connect with people.
Yep.
Which a lot of people are like, which is kind of funny because I know that you could have family right down the road and still never talk to them, which I find quite interesting how sometimes, it's like out of sight, out of mind, but you always find a way to try to talk to and keep in touch with some of the people you actually care about. But enough of that one. Obviously, looking at some of your old stuff, you're a proud grease monkey, to put it lightly, as far as your love for cars.
Yep. I
You
think
know,
I've had about 20 or so.
yeah. And looking at and then just working on and driving cars, it's definitely an art form of itself. How does, working, how would you explain, the aspect of a car as far as based upon artwork? And do you ever see yourself creating some sort of a composition of different types of automobiles?
It's very possible. So, I don't know if there's a correlation between car and painting. I think it just stems from, my upbringing, right? I had a Chevy Nova in high school, 350, right? Rumble, rumble, rumble.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fun car. So it's just a different passion.
Yeah.
Now, it might be possible to do like a compilation of cars, like I do my portraits. The thing with cars, though, to get that level of detail with the oil paints, it would take a while, because oil dries slow, right? So to get the detail, to get the those nuances that I would want in the painting, it would probably be a year-long journey to do 9 individual paintings, maybe, or I lose all my weekends. I just completed a Trans Am piece, and that one took maybe 4 or 5 weeks from start to finish.
Yeah.
So multiply that by 9.
Yeah. I guess you could kind of look at it as you're kind of, you're restoring a 32, like say a 34 Ford from the ground up on just with the frame.
Yeah.
If you're really going to put the passion into it, it'll be worth it. And so speaking about that, gosh, there's just so many, because I'm still having the flashback of when I ended up hitting your car in the parking lot.
How the hell are you gonna hit a parked car?
Well, you were kind of parked at a weird angle, and I was turning around, and I rubbed it. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah.
Um,
That was so funny, dude. And that was back when I had 2 cars.
yeah,
Oh,
it was like, well, okay. Yeah, and my car ended up looking a little bit worse than yours at the time.
yep. That's
But
funny, dude.
it's just like, wow, how did that even happen? So one thing I remember is you were one of the few people that I knew in the Marine Corps who didn't have any tattoos. Do you have any now, or is your body still a blank canvas?
When I was in Okinawa, I ended up getting 2 tattoos.
Mhm.
Let's see if I can get them. So this one should be the Autobots, if you can see it. And I
Yeah,
had it customized. I had it customized to be a halo. Can you see it? It's a
yeah.
halo up here. Okay. Then on this shoulder is the Decepticons, which I had modified to have the horns pop out.
Hmm.
So I got the good and the bad with the evil and and the angel. But it's one of those like I forget that I have them until I go swimming with the kids
Yeah,
because everybody's looking at me like. So
it's
yeah,
kind of, yeah, just talking. Yeah, I'm up to 7 now, and there's more I want to get, but it's like, do we want to eat, or should I just go ahead and get some permanent ink on my arm?
yeah,
Um,
no, serious.
it's kind of funny. We're thinking about cars. Um, this is what I wanted to ask you was, do you ever see yourself trying to maybe customize or paint cars to that sort of show level? Is that something that you would want to try one day?
I had started a journey. I have a '70 Mustang, but when we moved out here, we left it in New Mexico.
Hmm.
Um, it was stripped all the way down to the sheet metal. Everything's down, everything's off. Um, so it would be fun. I got my 350Z in the garage paid off. I just fixed up the paint on that, and it's now that these toys are paid off, I'm like, it might be something to do, but I need uh, more time and space.
Yeah.
That's and it's very expensive, right? That would be an expensive hobby.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see you having like your own little like say Orange County Choppers show where you're sitting there doing the fine detail of cars or something like that. Um,
Yeah.
what is one of the like? Do you take requests? And if so you do, what is one of the oddest requests that you've gotten from somebody to either paint or whatever?
I haven't received anything odd. Um, I get the standard requests of, can you paint my family member, right? Pick the type of family member, paint the family member. Uh, can you paint my dog um, or car uh, or themselves? But no, I don't think I've ever received anything out of the norm. I mean, those are the standard commissions that I receive.
Yeah, so no one's really
Pretty.
asked you to like a portrait of a pig sitting at a dinner table wearing a blue handkerchief eating a plate of spaghetti or anything like that?
No, no, no. But that might be normal because that could be their pet that's eating a plate of spaghetti. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
I don't
definitely
know.
something else. Hey, like, hey, here you go. So, all right, so you know, this was a question I asked some previous guests, and I thought it would be funny to kind of reuse it. But instead of writing an autobiography or say a biography, so you say you painted a painting representing your life, what would it look like?
Um, that's a very good question. I think it'd be like a collage, right?
Hmm.
Because you'd see my affinity for music, cars, family units, right? Family, miscellaneous miscellaneous family members. Of course, you got to have mom and dad in there, right?
Yeah.
But then you got to from a family unit perspective, that would take forever if I were to try to paint everybody, because I come from a family with a lot of family, which is a blessing. So there'd probably be a guitar in there. I would have to, maybe this would be a circular reference, but there would have to be a painting within a painting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna say family would probably be the biggest theme that would come in there, though, because that's what all this is about, right?
Yeah.
So
being inspired by art, I know my favorite artist, it would be, as far as painting and drawing, would always be MC Escher, and my favorite photographer would always be Ansel Adams, just because of just the black and white, and how you're going to get the somberness, but you're also going to get some like MC Escher, you're going to get pictures that are just going to blow your mind. What would be like, who would be some of your favorite artists of all time?
I would say, from a oil painting perspective, John Singer Sargent. He's very awesome with the alla prima method. You gotta say Da Vinci. Then I would say, from a modern day artist, I would go with Jim Lee. He was kind of the comic book artist that I followed growing up.
Yeah.
And he did the X-Men series and moved over to Image Comics. Started with Todd over there on that group, right? Did Wildcats. And went back to DC, and so I would say he's the modern artist. Those would be the main ones that I would follow.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you mentioned Jim Lee. I remember getting a comic book signed by him a couple years ago at the Phoenix Comic Con, and I stood in line for like 2 hours just to be one of the first ones. And it was one of the ones where they did the reboot, where it had like Superman and Wonder Woman on the same cover. So so Jim Lee, even Jeff Johns, Stan Lee is always going to be up at the top. Todd McFarlane. It's kind of funny how a lot of our just who inspires us and how it inspires us, and sometimes you get recognition from that. And speaking of which, what crossed your mind when you saw George Carlin liking your picture of him on Instagram?
George Clinton?
George Carlin, yeah. George Clinton, yeah.
That was just amazing, right? That's kind of like validation. It was like I went, the snooper in me, right? I went to his Facebook page, and then there's other artists who, tag him, right? When they complete their pieces, which is like the modern day way of doing it. And I just compared, right? Here's a piece, here's a piece, here's a piece, and it didn't seem that he was liking their artwork, right? So it was just neat, right? I don't think words can describe it. It was just a very cool validation that the artwork was, that even George Clinton was like, nope, I like it.
Yeah. Even to something as simple as just that little bloop, you're like, scroll. All right, cool. Boom. So quick question. Obviously, you're living in North Dakota, not as easily readily to get your batch of green chilies or whatever it is that you would always get from New Mexico. How what are some dishes that that you miss and are specific to New Mexico, and it is hard as hell to get there? What's that hometown comfort food that you're craving and you can only really get it there?
So you hit the nail on the head with the green chili, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can get the canned, but it's not the same. But I would say, from a restaurant perspective, Dion's is awesome. I miss Bob's Burgers. They have some awesome chili cheese fries that make your nose run because it's just so good with heat. Huevos rancheros from a dish perspective, or even a tortilla burger. If you know what a tortilla burger is, right?
In Arizona, but I've never seen it.
So it's basically, instead of a bread around the bun and all that fixings, it's just a tortilla wrapped around the same hamburger. It's just the tortilla burger.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, the answer's in the name. All right, there you go.
Or even a sopapilla, stuffed soapy. Those are things that we just, unless we make it ourselves, there's not out here.
Yeah, I'd say the one dish for me, I can get Skyline, I can get the packets. They sell it in the cans here at the grocery store. But the one dish that I've tried to recreate, and it's just never the same, is Geta. And I would have to equate it to a German version of chorizo, where you got your pork ground up with, spices, but it also has oats in it. So it's a kind of a grainy meat. And it's kind of funny how you can only get some of those certain things. Now I could have it shipped out here, but it's never the same. So yeah, we're kind of coming up close near the end. We could definitely spend all day talking about stuff, but I know you have stuff to do. Your kids are going to be up, so I want to be respectful of your time. Where can people go to find more information about where what is it that you do? Website, social media? Where can people find your information?
So my main source is Instagram, Andy Martinez Art, and then all of the other social medias are the same tag, Andy Martinez Art. But I'm more active on Instagram than the others. And then I have my website, which is basically just a e-commerce, which is Andy Martinez Art. .com. So, I'm thinking about maybe changing my web vendor, but we'll see. So that goes.
Yeah. So, Andy, definitely want to take some time and just say thank you very much. I know, we've kind of kept in touch a little bit here and there through social media, but I do kind of kick myself going, you know what? Why didn't we just do something like this sooner? And I think, I want to have a follow-up where we can kind of get some of the old crew back together and just have, just sit back and talk with everybody. I know that would definitely be fun.
That'd be awesome.
So, just to go ahead and close this out here, take about, 45 seconds or so are yours. So with some parting words of advice for anyone about anything, 45 seconds, a minute, the floor is yours.
So the biggest piece of advice that I have is try everything. Try guitars, try drums, try violins, try watercolor, try oil, try paint, try the Marines, right?
Yeah.
Just try everything at least once, and just live life to its fullest. We're not promised tomorrow, right? I mean, we're not promised tomorrow. So you gotta live with that.
Yeah, there's some very sage words. Well, Andy, dude, it was great talking to you. It's literally, kind of picked up like we were left off, and I haven't even talked to almost, it's been almost, was it 21 years almost that we got to we first met? Something like it was like
it was
summer of
August
99.
of 99. Yeah, August of 99 when I joined 1st Marine Division. And then I don't know if you left first or if I left first.
I think, yeah, you left first. I was there until September 2002. So you, I
Okay,
think
so
you
yeah,
were,
then I left March of 2002 to go to Korea.
yeah.
That was my next TV station.
And it's kind of funny how 21 years and part of it kind of feels like it hasn't been 21 years. And like I say, even though
No.
we haven't really talked to this like this in such a while, it's like, okay, we just kind of pick up where we left off. So
Yep.
we gotta do this some more.
Sounds good,
Try to
man.
get some more people involved. Andy, again, thank you for your time. And everybody, you heard his information. Andy Martinez Art. He's got e-commerce site. If you see something you like, buy it. Share share what he's doing. He's obviously, you hear it, you see what type of person he is. He's a very cool dude. I would describe him as he's got the funk and the humor of Robin Williams, but he's also as cool as the other side of the pillow. So thank you very much, Andy. We're definitely going to do this again. Thank you very much for your time. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, bud. Bye.